Thank you, Dr. McIntyre, for your keynote address. And now we have really reached the final session of the symposium, which is the Roundtable Discussion. She was born in October 1974 on Curaçao. She holds a bachelor's degree in international management, a master's degree in business administration, and in addition is a certified public accountant. She lectured at the University of Curaçao, formerly known as University of the Netherlands Antilles, where she taught principles of accounting and corporate finance. She also served as a lecturer at the Intercontinental University of the Caribbean, formerly known as CURICIS, where she taught Introduction to Financial Accounting. In 2012, she returned to Sint Maarten, where she manages the local office of BDO Dutch Caribbean. It is with pleasure that I welcome our moderator, Ms. Marcia Illidge, to the stage. At this moment, I would like to request the keynote speaker, Dr. McIntyre, and the other featured speakers, Ms. Arnell, Mr. Barefoots, Ms. Joseph, and Dr. Peterson to also join us.
Program. I would like to thank you for your very inspiring speeches, the great knowledge that you shared with us today. I want to start with two announcements. The first announcement being that we will also be using the results of the survey during this part of the program, during the panel discussion. And the second announcement, I'm going to look at my audience. We want to make this as interactive as possible. We're going to try to do it the modern way. So I'm going to ask you to take out your phones, leave it on silent. I'm not seeing anyone taking out their phones. It's not scary at all. Just take out your phones, go to the website, slido.com. The instructions will come up in a minute. Slido.com, Slido being SLIDO.com. And enter the code INTERACT, because we're going to make it interactive. There's going to be a test question. It has nothing to do with the panel discussion, but it just has to do with the fact we want to see if it's working or not. So please answer the question. Do you see the question? Yeah. Slido.com, SLIDO, interact. Do you have, can I ask a question, does everyone have 3G or faster internet on their phones? Can I see some hands, 3G and faster? Or I have no idea?
Also an option.
Also an option. Can I see the results? Are we voting? The code is interact. There we have the instructions. Slido.com, code interact. You're going to see Governor Symposium. There's a test question, the industry that you work in. Is it a private sector, public sector? Are we voting? 2 votes, only 2 votes. That's not a lot of votes. I know there's about 100 people out there, 180 people out there. No connectivity?
Yeah, Telem is also in the room, I think.
Time's up. How many votes do we have? To the top right corner, you can see how many votes we have.
14.
14? That's not a lot. Is it because we're not voting, or is it because we don't have connectivity? Connectivity? How many do we have? 18. That's going.
Right? Yeah.
21. 21.
So they're getting there.
They're getting there?
Yeah, it's getting warming up.
So we have a lot of people from the public sector, private sector, a couple of nonprofits, 26. Okay, let me refresh everyone's memory who we have here in the panel discussion. We have Mr. Dr. Peterson from the Central Bank of Aruba. He gave us great information on how we're going to finance national development. Ms. Fenna Arnell, who gave us looked at it from a healthcare perspective. We have Mr. Tazio Berfus, who shared with us from an environmental perspective. Ms. Joseph, from an organizational, the private versus public sector, from an organizational perspective, and our keynote speaker, Mr. McIntyre, who shared with us how we're going to unlock our national development. Mr. McIntyre, can I ask you a question? I'm a bit puzzled. I heard you share, thank you, some percentages with us. 0.1%, 1.1%, 2.2%, 0.5%, all very low percentages. 0.5% and 0.7% were our percentages, the percentages of economic growth of country St. Martin in 2015 and expected growth in 2016 being 0.7%. Now I understand that economic growth is a much narrower concept than national development. But the IMF, if I'm not mistaken, the IMF called our national growth, our economic growth, lackluster growth recently. You said earlier today, sluggish growth. Now with that growth, and when you read on the topic national development, you read that the economy, that's the engine. We have to keep the engine moving. But if the engine ain't moving, how are we going to achieve national development? How are we going to accelerate? Because our engine doesn't seem to be moving.
Well, thank you very much. I think the important, there are a couple of sort of caveats to that. I think the important one is that you have financial stability. By that we mean that your government finances by most metrics are in good shape. Your debt levels are low. So you're not dealing with large financial imbalances like a lot of the rest of the Caribbean are dealing with. And that has to be preserved at all costs, because once that is not there, that's a major challenge to deal with. Having said that, you're not achieving the growth rates that you had of the past. And as I try to point out, that's not entirely surprising, because you have gone up the growth spectrum or the growth trend line on the basis of a certain level of skills and a basis of institutions and on your tourism industry. And I'm not knocking that. There's a lot to be said for a vibrant tourism industry, and I don't see any reason for you to change that. What I am saying is that the second or third generation of reforms that you need to do, or we suggest you do, is to focus on deepening the skill content of your population. Providing people with a wider array of skills with which to enter the labor market. So that investors looking at St. Martin not see that the range of skills that they may need, particularly in the IT sector, since IT is such a critical part of most business activity, you can provide in reasonable numbers. And what you can't provide, you are willing to take from the rest of the world. So investor doesn't feel, well, I may not get all the people I want, and if I want to get the people I need, it looks pretty much like a hassle to get that done too. And on the second element of it, whatever government needs to provide for business activity, and business activity, there have to be economic regulations. And whatever government wants to provide, it is done efficiently and in a timely manner. Those are the ingredients, or some of the ingredients you need to be able to strengthen your economic growth over time. But it's not an overnight success. This requires sustained effort. Moving from where you are to a higher level of standard of living and development is going to require a sustained effort. And remember, because you're not only doing this on your own, you're doing this in competition against others. And you are doing this against a background in which the world economy is recovering slowly from a global recession. The countries you rely on are recovering, but recovering slowly. So the external environment is not as favorable as it could be.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, would you like to share your view? I'm curious to know your view on how we're going to get this done with our sluggish growth.
I concur with the answer of Dr. McIntyre, but I would like to add a couple of footnotes to that answer. I think firstly, as you know, Dr. McIntyre pointed out, you're not working and developing in a static economy or environment. It's extremely dynamic, and it's almost as if you're running to stand still. It's called the Red Queen effect in economic development. It's almost like your economy is idle, it's at high RPM, and it's just running and running and running, and you're burning, but you're not going nowhere. And that has to do with, one, competition. That has to do maybe with an unfavorable economic environment, with shifting geopolitical powers, with a Caribbean that has an internal dynamic by and of itself. If only Cuba is just one country, but that will have ripple effects and domino effects throughout society. So those are some of the external factors that you're dealing with. So it's not static, it's not dormant. So if you move forward with 1 mile, somebody else is going to move forward by 1.1 mile. So that's hyper competition. We have come to an age of hyper competition, actually. Having said that, I do believe, and again being inspired by William Demas from 1965, I do believe that our structural reforms of the past 30 years, whether it's the first wave, the second, or the third wave, will be insufficient, necessary, but insufficient to achieve structural economic development. And I say that because if we look, for instance, at the Sustainable Development Goals that we have, we already know that for other islands in the Caribbean, we would need growths of up to 4% to achieve these by 2030.
4%.
4%. St. Martin and many of the other islands in the Caribbean are nowhere close to 4%, give or take 2 or 3, 4 islands that are doing pretty good. So the challenge is very real in how we move forward. Consequently, structural reform will not be enough if we are not willing to structurally transform. I strongly believe, with the evidence that we have to date and coming forward based on different other studies, that the only way the Caribbean, including St. Martin, will move forward is to innovate its way out of the whatever trap you want to call it, whether it's the income trap, whether it's the complacency trap, whether it's the government going to pick up the tab trap. There's so many factors playing a role there. And when we speak about innovation, I'm not only speaking about innovation in terms of the private sector, we're speaking about ecosystemic innovation, systemic structural innovation across public sector, private sector, education, healthcare, ecology. It's only when you start connecting those dots and outthinking the past will you be able to create that future that will be able to help you achieve whatever goals you have set forward for 2020 and 2030.
Thank you. So if I can, Ms. Joseph, or would anyone like to add to that? No, correct. Okay. So if I can recap, we need to do some serious soul searching before we can transform, or to be able to transform to the future.
You know, the challenge with soul searching is, as a collective body of souls, definitely.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do is isolate yourselves in some meditational yoga state, which is good, don't get me wrong.
But together.
Just to take it outside.
Yeah, I know. But I definitely believe that the way we've done business for the past 20 years is not going to guarantee success.
The future.
So we really need to rethink this, and it's not going to be up to only the economists or the healthcare specialists or the environmentalists or the psychologists or sociologists. That's the richness of that diversity that we have in our societies in the Caribbean. Collectively, combining all those creative spirits, that will lead to the solutions that we need. We have to outthink our problems and not be as complacent. And that really requires getting in touch with our true nature, soul searching.
Thank you. Ms. Joseph, can I pick your brain for a minute?
Tell me.
In order for national development to be successful, a country must make sure that the national development vision or plan has broad public engagement. We've heard it several times this morning. The National Development Plan must contain a long-term strategic framework while articulating a shared vision for the country. How do you think we score? I mean, it's been shared a bit, it's talked about this morning. How do you think we score when it comes to involving everyone in our community? Before you answer the question, I want to try it one more time. Let's go to slido.com and see what our audience thinks.
Okay.
Can we? You want to try it one more time? Does everyone still have it open? Do you think we failed or passed at including
Those are
the entire? Those are the two options that we're giving the audience.
The audience, okay.
The survey participants got 5 options, and I'll share the results in a minute. Do you think we failed or passed? Is this working? Yes, can we get the results up, please?
Yeah, and then they're going to give an answer.
Uh-oh. We have how many? 50 answers?
83 to 17, and you have to decide.
I have 55 answers. You can continue voting, but we're going to work with that because I think it's clear. The audience thinks we failed. What is your opinion on this?
And I will agree with that opinion.
You will agree
I
with
think there's definitely room for improvement. I would still give it a fair, a little borderline, because I think we make attempts. There are many attempts to engage people and have dialogue, but somehow it goes back into everyone going into their corner, maybe getting frustrated with the process, and then going back into their corner and coming up with their own way of approaching it. We have seen so many different plans from each individual perspective. The health sector goes and say, this is what we need, education, this is what we need, youth. And that is not the broad-based approach that everyone is talking about. It's not the inclusive. So I think there are attempts, but they're not succeeding. So maybe we need to look at exactly why it's not succeeding and how we can get everyone in the room to dialogue, to do that collective soul searching to find out exactly what we need. Because once we have a national vision, everybody has a role. The youth has to be aligned with what the workforce needs, has to be aligned with what the economy needs to grow. We have to make sure that our tourism is also including all aspects. Everyone has to be pointing in the right direction, and everyone has a role in this. So it is fair. Attempts are being made. Success is not being booked. Let's see, why not?
Well, you know, the participants of the survey tend to agree with you because 43% of the participants think that it is fair. 33%, which is an extremely high percentage, thinks that it's poor, and 10% thinks that it's very poor. So I think there's definitely room for improvement because we have 40% of 260 people that we spoke to saying that it's below par.
Yeah.
Okay. Can anyone, Ms. Arnell, would you like to share?
I concur.
You concur? Okay. In defining your national development program, there are several policy areas that you can touch, that you can include in the national development program. We asked the participants of the survey, or we provided them with 12 options. I'm going to read them out to you, Ms. Arnell. The 12 options were education, employment, the environment, good governance, healthcare, housing, infrastructure, and infrastructure being electricity, water, telecommunications, and roads, national unity, political stability, poverty alleviation, social security, and then the category other. Now, I think we have a challenge because 9 out of the 12 items scored a 7 or higher out of 10, 7 or higher as to the priority given by the participants. So the conclusion I drew is that we want to include everything. Now we know that that's not possible. That's not a realistic goal to set. What areas do you think we should include in our national development debate?
When I look at it from the concept of the definition given of health by the World Health Organization, let me start over. From looking at it from the healthcare perspective, you would expect me to say healthcare should be the priority. But taking the definition of World Health Organization into consideration and understanding that by focusing on the social developments, that the social determinants actually that influences health, you will automatically be focusing on health while focusing on those as well. So education is definitely a priority. Employment, definitely a priority. Environment, definitely a priority. I would like to say all. Okay? But if I would have to go back and to say which areas would I want to pass on to a second term, can I say other?
Other was defined. They gave us crime, immigration, free schooling, free tuition fee, music. So there's a lot.
That's also important.
Yeah, there's a lot. Mr. McIntyre, maybe you can help us. How can we prioritize, or how should we prioritize?
Well, I think you have to rely, I think you have to look at your past, and countries tend to do this, particularly small islands where the world looks a big and difficult place. You have to look at your past and don't downplay your achievements. That's the first thing. Then I would suggest, having done that, you have to be guided by where you think you want to go, where you think your future is. And in that regard, it's quite fine to be ambitious. It's nothing wrong with being ambitious. And be ambitious. You have achieved a lot. There's nothing in your past that suggests you should not be ambitious. But I think, as my colleague pointed out, in setting your priorities, recognize that this is a different world. I mean, 20 years ago, the advanced countries, as we call them, had about 70% of the world's GDP, 70 to 75. Today they have about 48 or 49. They share it with the big emerging markets. The world is changing. And therefore, recognize that a lot of what you have done before, you have to reinvent. Innovation. I think my colleague, Mr. Peterson, is absolutely right. Some of the processes that you've become accustomed to, you have to change. Some of the inhibitions you have about the outside world, you have to lose. You can only benefit by integrating. So my suggestion would be, in setting your priorities, build on your strengths, be ambitious, and seek to build partnerships wherever you find them.
Thank you. Mr. Burford, as you heard, the environment was given as one of the options that we should focus on. How do you think the environment scored in the list? Do you think the participants to the survey gave it a high score? Is it important? Or did they give it a low score, not to give it too much priority in a national development debate? But before you gather your thoughts, and while you gather your thoughts, I'm going to ask the audience, again, to help us out with the poll. How do you think, this time you're going to have to choose the number of stars you give the environment in a national development debate. How important is our environment to you? Wow. I don't see how many people. I can't see to the right. It's 10 people, 20 people?
25, 29, 200, no, 33.
Glasses. It
Yes.
started up with 10, you can't see it, but it started up with 10 stars, which is really important. And then as the votes start going up, your priority goes down, I think, right? Did I see it right?
57 and 25%, 58, 24%. 60, 23%.
That is not good. So how many people voted? I have an
62%, 29, 62, 63 voted, and 29% say it's the most important thing, I think, on a scale from 1 to 10.
Okay, but it's up there. I think they give it more than, I think it's 4 or 5 stars, is it? Or isn't that the...
25% gave it the most stars, I guess. 8% gave it second most. So 32% say this is really important. I'm guessing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about what third?
About a third thing is really very important. When asking the survey participants, they score the environment as 7 out of 10, so quite important. Now you have to understand that the participants, 150 plus were youth, and 90 plus were adults. So maybe there is a differing factor because we're all adults here. So maybe the youth think the environment is a bit more important. Yeah. What is in your continuous efforts, Mr. Barefoots, to protect our environment? Do you feel that the environment is loved and does it get the priority that it should or shouldn't get? What is your experience?
No, I mean, everybody can hear me correctly. well, on one hand, it's good for me because that means I'll have a job for at least a few more years to come, doing the work that I have to do. But this is something that we find quite generally. You know, when we go out in the communities, we find that there is still a little bit of a disconnect between, you know, the older generation and the need that they see to protect the environment, or the importance that the environment plays in the development of a country. What we think is, you know, one of the reasons why is because St. Martin, and this is one of the main challenges that we face when we try to do our outreach, you know, because of the rapid development, because of the increase in immigration, most of the focus has been on you know, making a living, creating the money, you know, putting, you know, food on the table, basically. And much of the focus on the reason why St. Martin has a tourism product, because of our natural resources, has been lost a little bit. But we do find going into the schools, you know, having volunteers with us from a younger generation, and that shift is kind of moving. So yeah, I mean, of course, I think there's age bias associated with that. So, you know, we see encouraging news or encouraging developments coming that, you know, that sort of environmental awareness, and in my talk I was talking about environmental consciousness, is kind of, you know, coming out of the younger generations, sort of people around my age and a little bit younger, whereas, you know, the older generations still have a little bit of a disconnect between the importance of protecting and conserving the environment and you know, the role it plays in the economic development of the country. So yeah, it is encouraging. We still have some work to do. I mean, our most challenging demographic is, you know, sort of 45 to 75. But it is encouraging to see that the younger generation especially is starting to have a more closer connection to the land and to the efforts that we do, and we encourage everyone else to do to protect it.
So there's hope for the environment.
There is always hope, not only for the environment, but for the country in general.
That's great to hear. I forgot to mention one thing about Slido.com. As we are busy with the panel discussion, you can go ahead, and if you have any questions for one of the panelists, you can go ahead and type it. There's two options in the Slido. So you see the polls, and there's also the questions option. If you go ahead and type your question there, later on it will be presented on the screen, and the ones with the most likes, so you can also like the questions of your peers, and the ones with the most likes will be presented to the speakers. Mr. Barefoot, thank you for the enlightening environment. Ms. Arnell, you spoke, you summed it up in one sentence, really. Do we, or let me share with you first results of the questionnaire. 35% of the participants of the survey are of the opinion that our healthcare is poor. 43% thinks that our healthcare is fair, so okay. Now my question to you is it because of the fact that we focus or have focused on direct healthcare as you defined it for too long? Is that why we think we score so low? Or is it that we don't have the wealth to ensure the health? To share your, I think you've summed it up perfectly.
I think it's a combination of both, and I believe that we have too often focused on the availability of the facilities, the state-of-the-art facilities, to determine whether or not we have positive, whether the healthcare system is good. And please, I am not saying that we have a bad healthcare system, and I'm not saying that we have a good healthcare system. There's always room for improvement. And I think it's important to improve because it's a dynamic process. Development is dynamic. You can never say we are finished. You're constantly moving forward. But I do believe that when persons speak about healthcare, they talk about the facilities. Today, because of the fact that we have so much access to information, the media, Google is never wrong. And we are realizing as a people that there are more aspects to being healthy as a person. And in that aspect, I also believe that indeed the determining factors towards feeling and being healthy also plays a role in that answer, in that response. Because if I cannot afford, I can't even imagine how to live from month to month, that plays, it takes a toll on me as an individual, and that passes on to my community as well. So it's important to strengthen those determinants so that you can be strengthened as an individual and also improve on our facilities, because it's a dynamic process. We're never finished when it comes to developing in healthcare.
Mr. Peterson, I see you're
Yeah, it's actually a topic I know almost nothing about, but have a very strong opinion about.
Do share your opinion with us,
So
Mr. Peterson.
I'm not sure I'm going to share it, but my intuitive logic indicates that if you want to have a healthy economy, you need to have a healthy society.
Yeah.
And if you want to improve your productivity, you probably have to improve your emotional state of your labor market, as well as their physical state and other matters. Those two are inextricably linked to each other. So whether it's health to wealth, wealth to health, the message here being actually is one of which is maybe more fundamental, which is the following. Too often in the past, we have led to believe that a divide and conquer philosophy is the best way. We divide and we conquer. Public, private, economy, society, economy, environment. I sense the same questions also with the ecology. But the new philosophy, whether you want to call it inclusive, or whether you want to call it, dynamic or integrative, is no longer a philosophy and a policy of choosing between two alternatives. And the beauty of the new generation, actually, as pointed out maybe by the survey in your own, indicates they do not think in mutually exclusive options. They do not think that we have to choose our economy over our ecology. They do not think that we have to choose health over happiness, or wealth, or money. They somehow intuitively, because of Google, connect the dots intuitively. So the challenges that we had in the past of trying to put certain things in certain boxes, they don't see that.
It was clear from the survey that they want it all.
Yes, and they're like, dude, just do it. What's the challenge? The challenge for us as policymakers, I see moving forward, is that recognizing the interdependency between these objectives and goals. And once you start doing that, you will see that there's certain interdependencies, path dependencies in your policy. So moving forward, there's certain objectives you cannot achieve if you've not achieved other previous objectives. It's very difficult to improve education and healthcare if your institutional capabilities and corporate governance and public governance are not in place. So there are certain foundations that you need to build upon before you can reach certain other goals. And once we start doing that, we can meet and start thinking in an inclusive fashion and then realize those sustainability development goals.
Thank you very much for your opinion. I think we have time for one more question. And if I may, Mr. McIntyre, you mentioned in your presentation that we must reform the labor markets to improve flexibility and to address skills mismatches. To achieve this, you talked about easing restrictions and investing in vocational education, develop targeted training programs. Now, from our survey, we asked the participants whether our education teaches the competencies necessary for the jobs on the island, and 30% agreed. 33% was indifferent, and 26% disagreed. In other words, the majority, 63% of the participants, either agreed or indifferent. Can it be, Mr. McIntyre, that we are unaware of a mismatch?
That's a very good question. What I would say is that when we say about mismatches, when you look at the industry you have, and we interact with your business community, and also being placed in Washington, we talk to international people. How do they see the islands? And not a lot, but get some interaction. What are people's perceptions? And we think other countries in the region, we look at the Cayman Islands, we look at Bermuda, the British Virgin Islands, Barbados, places that you have something in common with in terms of level of development and so on. People's concern is, look, if I brought a state-of-the-art hotel to St. Martin, you have a very good range of hotels. Your national priority is to try and to break into the higher income end, right? And you ask people, do you think they can compete in the higher income end. In some of that percentage, that small percentage of the elite hotels in the Caribbean that exist, some of the one may exist here, in other parts of the Caribbean, can they compete with the Caribbean and other parts of the world for that? And people say, well, my one concern is if I brought a higher income hotel to St. Martin, can I get the people I need? For example, the range of cuisine that a higher end property has to offer. Can I bring in the chefs that I need? If I need Japanese chefs at certain times of the year, I need this. Can I get the skills that I need? And if they don't have it, how quickly can I get it? I may need it for 3 weeks. I may have a package of people coming in that wants a certain level of cuisine. I have to provide that. Can I get those people in and back out to service the clientele, the high-income clientele that I want? And many people are concerned about that. But in a small island, small country, or even a large one, a small country, when you need skill, you cannot hold or restrain business activity because of regulation. And your desire is always to provide as much from your population indigenously as you can, but your population is small.
So at some point.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
Your population is small and will only ever be able to sustain a proportion, not the entirety of your economic activity. A country as large as the United States, as wealthy as the United States, imports a large amount of labor every single year. It's from the most skilled to the most limited. So I think the skills mismatches are there and present, and your unemployment rate suggests that there are people looking for a job not getting one. And you then step back and say, how can I give them skills that the market may look for? And therefore, that's why we conclude, I think all of us agree, that identifying what are the skills you need and in what quantities you need them, and ensuring that you have international certification, because if somebody is sitting in California and want to invest here, they have to know, well, okay, I can get these people and they're certified by this.
Thank you very much. We're out of time. So does anyone want to? Okay. Does anyone still want to react on what Mr. McIntyre shared with us, or is it no? That's
Well said, yeah.
Okay. I think we have 3 questions from the crowd. How do we focus on securing national development while we share a free border with French Saint Martin and with a different government and with a different legislative system, with a different government? They didn't say to who they posed the question. So I'm going to start with Ms. Joseph. We have the French and the Dutch, 2 different countries. How are we going to secure national development while that border?
I can't imagine national development on the French side being much different than what we want to achieve on the Dutch side. So I think that might be an opportunity to collaborate. This is one of the things that we want to, that Dr. McIntyre talked about. Being that our environments are the same, I think the way how the population is built up is pretty much the same, and I can't imagine the vision being that different that it would be a barrier to us being able to move on and continue to develop our nation. So let's see where there's alignment, and let's do it together. I'm sure we can support each other in that, because I can't imagine it being that different from each other.
So it's all about working together,
working
for the
together,
betterment of
consultation, dialogue,
this beautiful
inclusion.
piece
There you go,
of
one island.
paradise.
That's why we're so unique, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is. Anyone else?
I think that one of the things that we should do is, as a country, as a nation, as a people, both French and Dutch, we sell this country as one island to 2 nations or something like that. We say one island,
Yeah, 2
two
nations.
people. But we live as one. And I think it's time that we start to also feel that we're one and act like we're one. One example is that we just begun the discussions with cross-border cooperation with French Saint Martin from a healthcare perspective, where we realize that on healthcare, we cannot compete with each other in this small island. It's time that we collaborate efforts, share with our resources to be able to ensure that our population is healthy. And if we use that as an example in the other sectors within the country, we would be able to share resources and really be the one that we say we are.
Thank you very much. I think well said. Oh, Mr. McIntyre.
Thinking about your question, sometimes people's perceptions in other parts of the world are important. You know, the Asians have a concept when they talk about development of flying geese. And if you ever see a set of geese, there's always one up front and others trailing. And they would say to you, I've heard one of these guys say, for 30 years, Japan was the geese out front. And Japan's rapid industrial development led to subcontracts in Korea, in Thailand, in Malaysia, and drove their industrial development. Today, China is up front. And China is pulling the rest of Asia. But what it says is that whoever is the front geese, it's not that important. The question is that that one has relationships with everybody else. And therefore, you have a single space. So a partnership is just a must for you.
It's a must. Thank you very much. Another question from the crowd. A one-pillar economy is a serious challenge for economic growth. How can we diversify and sustain our economic growth given the challenges in investment? Mr. Peterson.
I think, in continuing Dr. McIntyre's story about the Chinese and the Japanese have a saying, or a sign actually, that crisis in Chinese means two things. It means dire problems, or it means opportunities. And regretfully, but historically, it is known that the Caribbean islands tend to rise to their best when faced with dire moments, when they have to make those choices, when their back is up against the wall. Given the realities of that, and the fact that many of our islands actually, including Aruba, is currently a one-pillar economy, tourism economy. You are a small island, your physical space is quite limited, unless you start, and Tad's is going to have a heart attack right now, and I do not suggest this, but instead you start building bungalows in the ocean, as many islands in the Caribbean are doing. Yeah, but that is what is happening currently in the islands. Many of these islands are expanding their physical boundaries, and they're building and destroying the ecology environment without knowing what they're actually really destroying for the coming 20 years. So these are short-sighted solutions. And what this is actually partially what Dr. McIntyre also indicated, is an internal diversification within the tourism industry for a sort of higher-end type of tourism. We could call it higher value, but still it's lack of values, because I'm not sure how you would basically destroy your island for, a couple of, more thousands of tourists in that sense. I do believe, though, that the tourism business model in the Caribbean, for quite some time actually, has run its course. Simply adding more tourists to your island, whether it's cruise, resorts, that will not add any significant value, and there's enough research out there actually that the cost of adding any additional rooms, resorts, cruise is actually costing our islands more money than adding any significant value. It might seem quite counterintuitive, but the social costs of tourism, the environmental costs of tourism outweigh actually in the long term any benefits in the short term of tourism. So obviously our islands need to look beyond tourism, what is available. In the Caribbean, you see different opportunities actually arising. But what is really interesting is that this thought of a pillar-based economy, we see many advanced economies, even small ones, moving away from the pillar thought of an economy, or silos. See, economies are thought of as in vertical sectors, but what we see happening right now, there are new types of industries emerging, hybrid industries, in which you see culture, tourism, creative arts emerging into something totally new. We see technology centers being established for tourism. We see energy sectors and tourism coming together. We see trade coming together. We see international business centers coming together, but combining with incubation centers. So entrepreneurship, education, healthcare, also a very important, particularly organic healthcare, lifestyle changes that a new generation actually of tourists, what they're looking for. So what you're seeing is that the traditional vertical way of defining what an industry is, even that is changing and moving forward in a totally different direction as islands and countries are actually redefining what a sector entails and how value chains interact with each other and create additional value for that respective country. Looking at St. Martin, you have certain benefits which have been to some extent have been part of your achievements. You have, as far as I can see, going back to the French-Dutch connection, you have a bilingual, if not maybe even trilingual, natural environment and social environment. That could be a benefit in many different international business ways. Your geographic location, your trade, your transport. I mean, the opportunities are limitless. But you know what it is? These opportunities exist, but as long as St. Martin doesn't decide where and what to prioritize, it doesn't really matter. It's your choice to make. What are your strengths? And you know your strengths, but you've got to decide on what those strengths are and how you expand on those strengths to build towards the future.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. We're almost out of time, but I don't think we can stop without addressing the most popular question. These were the top 3 questions, and the most popular question was, invest in your population, but how, so we have to invest in our population, but how do you avoid subsequent brain drain? Who can I
We all came back, so.
Well, this is proof that we will come back. No, but is there any, I mean, it was the most popular question, so I think we need to address it.
Based on what Candia said, we all came back indeed. And so what we should ask ourselves is, what was really our triggering factor for coming back? What caused us to come back? What caused me to come back? Fenna never lived in the Netherlands. Fenna studied in the Netherlands. Exactly. My address was always Arrowroot Road number 6. Yes. Why was that? From, I think, the time I was populated, from the time I was in Pampers, I was always told, St. Martin is yours. Unfortunately, we don't have educational facilities for you once you're finished, but one thing, you're getting a degree. So you'll have to leave to come back, because if you don't build St. Martin, then you leave St. Martin in the hands of someone else. And I think we have to start instilling that in our children. We have to start instilling that in our community, and we have to start really understanding what it means to build country. I'm so proud to have been part of the group who was preparing for country status, the change in our country status, that I didn't even realize what it really meant. It was just like, okay, roll up your sleeves, let's start to work. Today, I can understand it. Today, I realize that we have a lot more to do, but being part of that process makes me so proud. And I think we have to pass that over to the
next generation.
Rest of the generation, and the rest of the people of God.
Ms. Darnell, I think we're out of time, but I think this is the best way to end this panel discussion. Well put. It starts at home. It starts with the youth. What's the message that you give to our children? We have to listen to them because they clearly think differently to how we think. And then there's only good things for all of us in the future. I would like to thank you very much for participating in this panel discussion. And I give the words to the MC.
Thank you so much for this interesting segment. I would like to request the speakers to remain on stage for a few minutes.